For years, we've thought the megalodon was just a big shark, which is scary enough. After all, it could have eaten a creature the size of a whale in just 5 bites. Estimates indicate that the largest shark that ever lived had been around 59 feet long, which is a reasonable size and explains a lot. But the scientific community was wrong. Very wrong. Now, scientists have proven that megalodons could grow up to 80 feet long, which is the same as a 6-story building. The creature would have certainly been dozens of times bigger than you if you had seen it underwater. These giants ruled the ancient oceans between about 20 million and 3 million years ago. And even though it was a long time ago, they've left a lasting impression, becoming the protagonists of many movies. And scientists continue to search for answers about their life. Thanks to this, we still occasionally find their fossils. But the thing is, no one has ever found a complete skeleton. All we have are scattered vertebrae, a few scales, and, of course, those massive, razor-sharp teeth. The most complete piece we know of is a 36-foot section of a megalodon's spine. It was once part of the trunk of the animal's body. So, to assess just how big the megalodon was, experts compared its fossils to more than 150 species of sharks, both those that are alive and those that have gone extinct, to get the most realistic result possible. If the megalodon had had the proportions of a regular shark, it would have had a 6-foot head and a 12-foot tail. It would have also stretched 54 feet from nose to fin. But these measurements are way off the mark. The largest megalodon vertebra ever found is 9 inches in diameter, which makes it 3 inches larger than the largest vertebra of a typical shark. And if we follow these proportions, that megalodon was a whopping 80 feet long. To better understand how giant this is, just think of 2 school buses lined up end to end. For a long time, it was very common to think that the megalodon was just a giant great white shark. And it makes sense, right? I mean, both would have had large, terrifying, serrated teeth. But that was another completely wrong idea. Now, we know that megalodons were actually much more slender and aerodynamic than the modern great white shark. Their body shape was built to cut through the water with much less resistance, minimizing the effects of gravity in the sea, letting them glide effortlessly through the ocean. Now, if Megalodon wasn't just another great white shark, what other animal of the same species was it most similar to? Surprise! In fact, it had more in common with the modern lemon shark. This species has robust and powerful bodies, 2 large dorsal fins, and blunt snouts, which makes them really fast and agile hunters, like prehistoric predators. In other words, while thinking about the megalodon, you can imagine a giant, turbocharged lemon shark. This is the most modern comparison of the megalodon with another animal, unless scientists find a complete skeleton of the ancient shark. But it's not common to find complete shark skeletons. They're rare because they're actually made not of bone but of soft, coated cartilage, like the stuff in human noses and ears. Their teeth are the boniest part of their bodies, and it's the reason why we've found so many of them. Yet, a complete skeleton is like scattered puzzle pieces to us. There's no solid bone to hold these pieces together, so the whole thing is very vulnerable to falling apart. Still, it's actually possible for an entire shark skeleton to survive. In these cases, very specific natural phenomena have to come into play. The skeleton needs to get buried super fast in mud or sediment, free of any kind of scavengers and away from ocean currents. Otherwise, it simply disintegrates before it can fossilize. Interestingly, although the sea is the home of these animals, it is possible to find their skeletons on land too. Millions of years ago, a big portion of today's dry land was submerged, teeming with marine life. Then, in certain places, sedimentary minerals and specific biological conditions of the seabed allowed the fossilization of sharks in marine rocks. Today, those are desert rocks that ensure the preservation of shark fossils. But in any case, searching for a shark tooth in a desert is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But finding an entire fossilized skeleton embedded in a rock is like hitting the jackpot. Another unexpected discovery is that these prehistoric sharks were not born small and cute like regular baby sharks. A newborn megalodon could reach almost 13 feet in length. That's more than twice the height of the average human. Imagine a shark the size of a boat from the moment it's born. Now, although we don't have all the information about the giant of the seas, it's a fact that it's one of the most famous animals in pop culture worldwide. Not only has it inspired several movies, but some people also insist that the megalodon is still alive. Scientists say it's not. The megalodon didn't survive the test of time, and it would be impossible for such a giant creature to dwell in the seas without us noticing it. First, it was a super predator. It hunted whales, dolphins, and other large marine animals. If the Meg was still around, its presence would completely change the balance in the oceans. It would have huge impacts on marine ecosystems, regulating populations and influencing the size and behavior of the ancient shark's prey. A good example is whales. They wouldn't have grown so big if the Meg still hunted in the oceans. This only happened because there was no super predator in the way. If the giant shark was still in our oceans, species like the blue whale would be tiny, as they would need to develop and adapt to be able to escape constant attacks. The lives of the workers of the sea would also be completely different. Fishers would have to avoid certain areas, ships would change routes, and even maritime tourism would be risky. Going for a swim and coming across a shark over 65 feet long? Not worth the risk. Plus, if the megalodon was still out there, we would have some proof. Commercial fishing catches millions of sharks every year, and a monster of this size would not go unnoticed. Not to mention that with all of today's technology such as drones, satellites, and submarines at our disposal, someone would have already recorded an encounter with this living legend. By the way, most sharks, like most fish, are cold-blooded. But the reality for Megalodon was different. This giant was able to keep its body warmer than the surrounding ocean. This gave it an advantage over other sea creatures, allowing it to remain fast and active even in colder waters. It was a survival advantage that other animals of its kind did not acquire during their evolution. One of the most famous theories is that the Meg lives in the Mariana Trench, but scientists are sure that it doesn't make any sense. This region is poor in food and has many tiny creatures, which would not be nearly enough to sustain a large predator. In addition, there's a lot of research studying countless sharks that live in the ocean depths, and none of them come close to the size of the megalodon. So, does the megalodon still exist? Definitely not, but that doesn't mean it isn't any less mysterious and fascinating.
Okay, are you ready for an epic fight between two prehistoric predators? Well, hang on. Look at this creature. You know it. An ancient shark about 65 feet long that used to swim through the dark waters of the world's oceans and was so terrifying it had no enemies. Well, almost. Scientists have recently discovered the remains of another ancient predatory fish off the coast of Australia, a fish that lived around the same time as Megalodon. It was small, about the size of a dolphin, but it could pose a danger to the infamous shark. How is it possible if this creature was many times smaller? Well, let's take a look. This monster is called Janducetus, and technically it wasn't exactly a fish. It was a distant relative of the modern baleen whale. Outwardly, it may seem quite cute, similar to that baleen whale I mentioned, but you wouldn't want to meet it in the ocean. it had the massive skull of a whale, large eyes the size of tennis balls, and a short snout with an immensely powerful jaw filled with razor-sharp teeth. In other words, it was like a shark version of the baleen whale. Janjucetus lived during an ancient period called the Oligocene, which was about 33 to 23 million years ago. At that time, there was an incredible abundance of life in the world's waters. Giant penguins, small whales, sharks 2 to 3 times larger than modern ones, primitive dolphin species, and many other unusual creatures. Now imagine that in this ancient and terrifying neighborhood, a giant megalodon met a Janjucetus. At first sight, it's not love. The megalodon's victory is obvious, but don't rush to write the Janjucetus off. It's agile and fast. It's quite possible that it was more mobile than Megalodon, and during the fight, it would have avoided a direct attack. The Megalodon would have lost sight of such a small opponent, while the Janjucetus would have swum up to the shark's belly and opened its jaws. They're small, but there are a lot of sharp teeth. Now, these teeth were designed to rip and cut. The Janjucetus would attack the Megalodon with a small but very unpleasant bite, and the shark would have swum away after such a punch. But who knows? Maybe Megalodon would have immediately eaten Janjucetus in the first seconds of the fight. Megalodon could have won, but in terms of speed and mobility, it would have lost. So let's look at something bigger, something that could actually have competed with Megalodon. It doesn't have to be a monster living at the same time as the ancient shark. We can make our own rules. Imagine that all ancient marine creatures ended up in the same pool with Megalodon. So its next opponent is the Liopleurodon. Now initially scientists thought that this monster could grow to be 82 feet long, which is even larger than Megalodon. But more accurate studies have shown that it only reached 32 feet, which is about the size of a modern orca. The Liopleurodon lived in the waters of Western Europe around 160 to 155 million years ago and shared territory with other dangerous reptiles such as ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. Yes, it was smaller than them, but it had one big advantage. The Liopleurodon possessed one of the largest jaws in the animal kingdom, which accounted for about 20% of the total length of its entire body. That's a mouth. Its jaws were about 6.5 feet long. A huge, toothy mouth the size of an adult basketball player filled with smooth and dagger-sharp teeth, ideal for cutting steaks and peeling ammonite shells. And by the way, scientists suspect that ammonites and squid were the creature's main diet. This super predator was also a very fast and agile creature that ambushed and attacked its prey from below. Megalodon would have been in big trouble. The grip strength of a Liopleurodon would surely be more powerful than that of Megalodon. Besides, the Liopleurodon's size and mobility would allow it to attack the enemy from different sides. It's probably why Megalodon would have lost in that fight. The next opponent for our Megalodon is the Dunkleosteus, and to be honest, this guy has almost no chance of defeating the large ancient shark. But the Megalodon probably wouldn't have beaten it either. The Dunkleosteus was one of the earliest predators of the ocean. It lived in the late Devonian, about 382 to 358 million years ago. Its size was about 13 to 32 feet or even less, and it also had no teeth. What? A predator without teeth? How did it survive in a dangerous prehistoric world? Well, it grabbed and chewed food with the help of special jaw growths. Those growths were so powerful that they could pierce steel, if there was any around. In a sense, these were not teeth, but bones. Okay, let's say the Megalodon grabbed this predator by the belly and it couldn't do anything with its growths. But the problem is that the Megalodon would have hardly done anything either, because the Dunkleosteus was a heavily armored fish. Just look at this shell. It probably limited its mobility, but it provided incredible protection. This monster felt like a big stone in the teeth of the Megalodon. It's unlikely that the Megalodon would have wanted to chew this stone. It would have spit it out, and both predators would have gone about their business. We've got a draw here. And now, the final match. Here's the next opponent. You see anything? Is this enemy invisible? What's happening? Ah, there it is. Meet the Telemonstrum. It's a tiny ancient monster just 11 inches long. Huh? What can it do to a giant shark? Next to the megalodon, the telemonstrum is like a box of matches compared to a human. But if the megalodon had had a developed brain, like people do, it would have been very scared of this creature and would have immediately swum away. Many people scream and run away in fear when they see a creepy insect crawling or flying, or when a mouse runs across the floor. Some of us jump on the couch in horror. Not all of us, but some. The megalodon would have jumped out of the water like a dolphin if the telemonstrum had charged at it. Just check it out. It looks like an underwater bike with a long trunk with a jaw at the end. And these handlebars, where you would put your hands to control your bike, are the eyes. It's like the eyes of a hammerhead fish, only thinner and longer. The body of a squid, cuttlefish fins, snail eyes, and a toothed proboscis. This is a horror movie character. Scientists say it probably hunted jellyfish, small fish, and shrimp. And it didn't chew the food, it licked it like ice cream. Obviously, it's not an opponent for the megalodon, but it's still a creepy monster. Well, what would have happened had it really started a fight with a megalodon? It would have been difficult for the ancient shark to find it. It would have been unlikely to catch this tiny monster in the mouth, and the telemonstrum wouldn't have been able to do anything to the megalodon either. However, I can think of one strategy. The creepy creature had a long trunk. What if it had just swum under the megalodon's fin and started licking it? If the shark had felt the tickles, then it would probably have worked. But most likely, they wouldn't have fought each other. It seems like they would have made perfect friends. The telemonstrum lived about 300 million years ago in shallow seas and estuaries that covered the territory of the U.S. When scientists discovered this creature in 1955, they were shocked because no one had any idea what it was. Experts compared it to worms, tunicates, conodonts, mollusks, and vertebrates. And do you know who it really was? Well, scientists still have no idea. They can't determine its place on the tree of evolution. Perhaps this is some new branch, and its descendants simply haven't survived to this day. The megalodon was one of the most dangerous predators on Earth. But now we know that other equally scary monsters lived in the oceans. But what if the megalodon lived today? Who could have defeated him? A blue whale who would be even bigger than this ancient shark. But the blue whale seems to be a kind animal. It wouldn't fight. How about the kraken? The kraken versus the megalodon? Well, let's save this fight for another video. It was one of the biggest creatures ever to roam the earth. It was longer than your average school bus and could easily weigh more than 10 elephants combined. But where did it live? How did it end up having this size? And most importantly, why is it extinct nowadays? Let's find out. The megalodon was the largest predator ever known in our planet's history. In terms of its location, the megalodon lived practically in all waters on our globe, except near the poles. The reason why there were no megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is probably that the gigantic creature adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones liked to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. How do we know the megalodon was so widely spread? We can only presume, based on the fact that they discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The discussion of how the megalodon got this size is still open in the scientific community. They recently found out that not all the specimens from this fascinating species reach the same huge size. This has to do with a little something called the Bergmann's rule, which says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The megalodons that reach cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. On the contrary, those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. But what did this enormous fish look like? Most modern depictions show the megalodon resembling an enormous great white shark. But well, it seems it may not necessarily be correct. The megalodon likely had a much shorter nose and a flatter jaw that looked almost squashed when compared with a great white shark. It also seems to have something in common with the modern blue shark: extra long pectoral fins. They needed these to support their weight and size while navigating the planet's waters. Lastly, the lady megalodons, seem to have been about twice as large as the gentlemen. As for their offspring, even a small megalodon was enormous, at least 6.5 feet from nose to tail. How do we know that? Because specialists have stumbled upon megalodon nursery habitats in Panama, Maryland, the Canary Islands, and Florida. Even the piles of used diapers were enormous. Nah, not really. Surely the scariest aspect of the megalodon's looks was its mouth. I mean, think about it. Megalodon had whales for dinner, so it obviously needed to open its mouth wide enough. Scientists have estimated that its jaw would span a mind-boggling size, 9 by 11 feet wide. Just to paint you a better picture, that means it could have easily gulped down 2 adult people side by side. Wait, which 2 adults? Those impressive jaws also feature 276 teeth. Based on modern reconstructions of the force of its bite, it looks like it may have been one of the most, if not the most, powerful animals of prey ever to exist. For comparison, humans can have a bite force of around 1,300 newtons. Today, great white sharks have been estimated to be able to bite down with a force of over 18,000 newtons. The megalodon tops all the records, with an estimated power of bite up to 10 times greater than that. It could basically crush a car with very little effort. Its teeth were also pretty amazing. Similar to sharks, the megalodon was fast in replacing its broken or worn teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, growing back damaged or missing teeth within about 48 hours. This means that an adult megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. It was nice of them to do that, though, since it's probably one of the reasons why megalodon teeth are so common in fossil records, and we're able to study them properly. To maintain its impressive physique, the megalodon had to eat somewhere around 2,500 pounds of food per day. Can't wrap your head around that? Well, it was the equivalent of 1¼ cows per day to survive. It's like if you had to eat 3,300 cans of tuna every day. I've used the word megalodon a lot, but have I mentioned where it comes from? When translated from Greek, it means giant tooth. Ah, those clever Greeks. However, this giant shark's full scientific name is a bit more complicated: Carcharocles megalodon. But are these gigantic predators actually extinct? We tend to believe so, but let's be honest for a second. We've come to know more about the surface of Mars than the depths of our oceans. Like, we've only explored 15% of our oceans altogether. Who knows what may be lying out there in the deep? Maybe some ancient predators? The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth. The Challenger Deep, its deepest part, is so deep that you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in there and it would still be over a mile above the surface. That's deep. If a megalodon or 2 ever needed a place to crash, that would be a discreet enough location. However, the Mariana Trench is not a particularly comfy place to be in. Because it's cold and steeped in total darkness and all. The temperatures here are around 36 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. And to top it all off, the pressure is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So it's safe to assume that if any megalodon is hiding in here, its teeth and bones might not be looking so good. Because of the intense pressure here in the Mariana Trench, proteins and calcium start to dissolve and disintegrate. That's why, for example, the Haddell snailfish, the deepest dwelling fish we've discovered, has evolved to feature flexible cartilage instead of bones. To survive here, the megalodon would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means they would have to either become luminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. While it may sound like an intriguing and good idea for a movie script, most scientists don't think it's possible. Why? Well, most of them say it's because of the megalodon's size. Most foods that megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Specialists believe that if these animals were actually still roaming our waters, there's no way we wouldn't know about it. They would need to come up for dinner every now and then, right? Their food is also the most likely cause of why the megalodon is not alive anymore. While some specialists believe the megalodon became extinct because of a drop in the ocean water temperature, Most scientists suggested that the shifting food chain dynamics may have been more to blame. Why? Because at some point, there was less and less of its primary food source, baleen whales, and at the same time, the numbers of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks like the great white shark and whales, increased. The megalodon did live on this planet a lot more than we did, and way back when we didn't even exist yet. They were here for nearly 70 times longer than we, modern humans, have, inhabiting the oceans for around 20 million years. Homo sapiens appeared around 300,000 years ago. The megalodon managed to survive for so long mostly because of its unbeatable size. I mean, they can make a meal out of almost everything in the sea at the time. We may think about both of them as prehistoric creatures, but the megalodons and the dinosaurs never coexisted on Earth. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later. That's because the oldest megalodon fossils we have yet discovered are from the Miocene epoch, which began 23 million years ago. So long, Meg.
The megalodon was the biggest shark to ever live. Not only that, it's one of the biggest fish and the largest predator in Earth's history. Over 3 times longer than the biggest great white shark on record, the females have also been found to be twice the size of the males. The megalodon could swallow a small car without even touching its teeth, if cars had been around then. In fact, the Meg was so big and powerful that it had no natural predators. It was the uncrowned king of the seas, swimming freely from ocean to ocean. This cosmopolitan creature was found all over the world, from America to Europe and Australia and Japan, assuming there were countries back then. Meg fossils have been found on every continent except Antarctica. Everybody skips Antarctica. Science tells us that the megalodon went extinct over 3.6 million years ago, but could they still be alive at the deepest depths of the ocean? The fearsome name, megalodon, comes from 2 Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it certainly lived up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. Only around 80% of the ocean has been explored, so who knows what's lurking at the bottom. If you did manage to make it down, it's unlikely that you'll run into Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely that they're still around, but not impossible. Now, about the appearance of the megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a great white shark. The megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin moved backward. The sand shark has 2 dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly. It may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here is the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. The megalodon is usually described as a sort of giant great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg. But they weren't the best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter, using its smaller size and agility to snap up Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't help the whole extinction thing. We also have evidence that megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the megalodon was comparable to a large truck. While a great white was no match for an adult meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the meg. But its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the meg behind. The megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too. But how come there are so many megalodon teeth out there for us to analyze? Due to their messy, aggressive eating habits, sharks regularly lose their teeth. They lose a set of teeth every 1 to 2 weeks. That's 40,000 teeth in a lifetime. They must rake in a fortune from the tooth fairy. Because of this, their teeth were continually raining down to the ocean floor. Luckily for us, they're also the hardest part of the shark skeleton, which is why so many teeth have survived and become fossilized. It's fair to say the first discoveries of the meg's teeth confused people. Early discoverers thought that the meg's teeth were petrified tongues of ancient serpent creatures. They even used to call them tongue stones. It's also a common myth that the megalodon was around at the same time as the dinosaurs, although this would have been pretty cool. The dinosaurs were wiped out around 66 million years ago, but the megalodons came much later. The oldest meg fossil is only around 23 million years old, but it's tricky to pinpoint the exact date. After all, calendars weren't invented yet. They became extinct way before humans even evolved. The earliest Homo sapiens, which is a fancy name for the first humans, emerged about 2.5 million years ago. But what if the megalodon shark didn't go extinct? Whale populations have dropped drastically since these guys were last around, so there'd be way fewer whales for them to chomp down on. Whales have also gotten a lot smarter and learned new defensive moves, making them way harder to take down. It's estimated that they ate around 12 tons of food each day. The Kraken is a colossal squid, a legendary sea monster, the biggest hunk of calamari you ever saw. And if this monster had existed, the world would have changed beyond recognition. The Kraken has powerful tentacles, solid muscles with suckers at the end. They're impossible to escape. The Kraken can break a ship in half, or just pull it down into the depths. But the worst thing about the Kraken is its size. According to old sailors' stories, its size is almost 10 soccer fields. Hey, maybe the Kraken could play soccer. The Kraken legends said the monster was so giant that sailors mistook it for a small island. In past centuries, it would have been impossible to defeat such a beast. If the Kraken existed in reality, it might have had offspring. Yeah. In all the world's oceans, there would be giant monsters that could sink any ship. It's unlikely that the Kraken would have competitors in its habitat, so its population would grow strongly. Since the Kraken is enormous, it would need a lot of food, so the population of other large sea animals would fall significantly. Blue whales, great white sharks, other giant squids, all the big sea creatures would be endangered. The Kraken belongs to the cephalopod genus. This species includes squid and octopus, some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. The Kraken is a skilled hunter and will never fight in the open. Colossal squids live in deep waters and they have the largest eyes among all animals. The squid's eye is the size of a dinner plate. Thanks to this, they can see their prey from far away. Similarly, a Kraken would spot the ship much sooner than sonar could pick up the Kraken. It would always have the drop on you. Well, that's not good. In 1857, a squid beak was discovered on the coast of Denmark. Other huge squid remains were found in the Bahamas, and then scientists were convinced that gigantic squids existed. While colossal squid have been officially discovered since then, it's been more than 100 years and we still don't know what the max size they can grow to. The fact is, colossal squids are one of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They live in the depths of the ocean where it's challenging for scientists to reach. Any dive to a greater depth requires powerful, bulky equipment. Underwater bathyscaphs and cameras make a lot of noise and light, which squids notice from afar. They flee before we can see them. It's difficult to say if these huge squids were the size of a small island, but the truth is, we've only studied about 5% of the ocean. It may be that in its depths, monsters much more terrible than the kraken swim.
The Meg, aka Megalodon, roamed the oceans long after dinosaurs were wiped out by the Great Meteorite. It was one of the largest and most dangerous hunters that have ever lived on Earth, as well as the biggest shark. But then, about 3.6 million years ago, the last of its kind disappeared from our planet, leaving only huge teeth for modern archaeologists to keep finding. There are a few theories about why it could have happened, but scientists might have found the true reason. The Megalodon, which means big tooth, was the largest shark ever to exist. It reportedly lived around 20 to 3.6 million years ago and was truly enormous. Its bite was more powerful than that of a T-Rex, and likely any other powerful predator that has ever roamed this planet. It's probably not surprising since this marine creature had extremely strong jaws that could span from 9 to 10 feet wide. That's enough to swallow 2 grown-up people side by side. The jaws were also lined with 276 teeth, and they reached 7 inches in length. That's as long as a small hedgehog. Once these teeth got worn down, the shark got rid of them and grew new ones. Such large sedated teeth helped the Meg to eat meat easily. The shark itself could grow up to 59 feet long. That's twice the length of a London double-decker bus. The animal was also pretty heavy. While a fully grown T-Rex weighed about 8 tons, the weight of a large megalodon could be more than 30 tons. With no competitors, the enormous shark was the real king of the oceans. It hunted other sharks, large fish, and even whales. Then why did such a magnificent creature disappear from the face of the earth? The previous theories mentioned the great white shark. The megalodon is usually described as some gigantic version of this marine animal. And this is a common mistake made because most people think these creatures were related. But in reality, the Meg looked more like a modern bull shark. Its snout was snout, its lower jaw was rather flat, and long and massive pectoral fins supported the animal's weight. But what's more important, the ancestors of today's great whites existed at the same time as the megalodon. Now, with great size comes great clumsiness. And although the Meg was huge and powerful, it was also not as nimble as smaller and quicker great white sharks. Great whites could have rivaled a megalodon for food, and were often more successful hunters thanks to their agility. They couldn't fight the Meg openly, but were fast enough to steal its food. So according to this theory, the only food left for the megalodon were whales and equally big marine animals. Grown-up Megs could easily catch such beasts, but their offspring were much smaller and more vulnerable than their parents. Could smaller sharks have used this to their advantage? Maybe while megasharks were still little, they became a meal for great whites, as well as bull and tiger sharks. Even at those times, a great white shark could reach the length of 20 feet, while a megalodon kid was definitely smaller. But even if there had been no open confrontation between young megalodons and smaller grown-up sharks, Meg kids wouldn't have been able to find food for themselves to grow to adulthood. The reason is the same. The population of other sharks was growing, and they were rivaling each other and the Meg for convenient food. The more great whites and other sharks appeared in the oceans, the less food remained for young monster sharks. Eventually, they probably starved. But it's just one of the theories that try to explain why the Meg went extinct, and here's another one. A new study has shown that the Meg was most likely a warm-blooded predator able to regulate its body temperature, and that might have been the reason why this species disappeared with time. Scientists analyzed isotopes of the tooth enamel of the megalodon and concluded that the animal could easily maintain a body temperature that was around 13 degrees F warmer than the temperature of the surrounding water. Such a temperature difference is much greater than what other sharks living at the same time as the Meg had. and it's large enough for the ancient predator to be classified as warm-blooded. These days, most fish are cold-blooded. Their body temperature is the same as the surrounding water. But some sharks, like mackerel sharks, keep the temperature of all parts of their bodies a bit warmer than the surrounding water. But it doesn't make them completely warm-blooded because they simply store heat generated by their muscles. And in mammals, body temperature is regulated by a special region of the brain called the hypothalamus. Anyway, the Meg's warmer body allowed the animal to move faster, deal with cold water better, and spread out all over the world. But eventually, it might have led to a disaster. The megalodon lived during the Pliocene epoch, pronunciation. It began approximately 5.3 million years ago and finished 2.5 million years ago. During that period, global cooling occurred. It also caused the changes in sea level, which the megalodon probably didn't survive. The main problem for the predator was to maintain an energy level allowing its body temperature to remain elevated. But to do it, the animal had to eat a lot, and I mean it. But it was a challenging task in a time of changing marine ecosystems and while competing with newcomers, such as the great white shark. If this theory is true, then the amount of energy the Meg had to use to remain warm could have contributed to its extinction. This new information is very important to us. It shows that many marine predators in modern oceans might be experiencing the effects of ongoing climate change too. By the way, have you heard that there have been several cases when people were sure they had seen the Meg? Or at least some similar extremely large monsters. And these sightings happened relatively recently. For example, in July 1916, the New Jersey coast of the US was terrified by a series of shark attacks. They happened during an oppressive heat wave when hundreds of beachgoers tried to find shelter from the heat near the water. People described the culprit that had caused all that havoc as a giant shark, much bigger than any regular one. Since then, scientists have been debating which shark species was involved in those accidents. The most popular guesses have been the bull shark and the great white. A picture of a huge shark roaming the Pacific Ocean not far from Guadalupe Island appeared in 1999. The creature was nicknamed Deep Blue. It could be distinguished from others by a wavy pattern separating its gray back and white belly. But even though some people claimed it could be the infamous megalodon, experts came to the conclusion it was a female white shark, the largest ever seen. The average length of a male white shark is 11 to 13 feet. Females are bigger, up to 15 or 16 feet, but Deep Blue reached more than 20 feet in length. No wonder people were confused. For the last time, Deep Blue was spotted in 2013 near the western coast of Mexico's Baja California. But look, there's another jumbo shark, and you can meet it in any part of the world. The largest specimens can reach 40 feet long and weigh about 5 or even 6 tons. Could it be, if not the megalodon itself, but one of its relatives? Again, a wrong guess. That's the basking shark. This animal prefers subpolar seas, with temperatures not higher than 58 degrees F. Even though some of these animals do migrate to warmer places. Like whale sharks, basking sharks are harmless and don't attack snorkelers or divers. These creatures have loads of small teeth, but they don't use them when feeding. Instead, they swim with their huge mouths open and swallow plankton. A grown-up basking shark can filter nearly 2,000 tons of water per hour.
Within the ocean waters, somewhere in the southern hemisphere, a ghostly black shadow looms deep down in the depths. Suspiciously swimming far below, the megalodon is hunting for its next meal. With the appearance of a great white shark, but 3 times the size of the largest ever recorded, its intimidating design has evolved over millions of years, creating the ultimate natural predator. For millions of years, the intimidating evolutionary traits have gone unchecked and unopposed. With its keen senses, it detects its prey within 3 miles. As it swims below, it's been following an unsuspecting sea turtle that's slowly paddling above on a long voyage. The megalodon stalks the turtle, ensuring it makes its move toward the turtle at the right moment. swimming upward at 11 miles per hour, intending to immobilize the turtle by ramming it. As it approaches, the megalodon's adept senses notice something else lurking nearby. Pausing its pursuit of the turtle, it adjusts and turns to face another, much larger object. The megalodon may be the largest marine predator to have ever lived on Earth, rightfully feared by all creatures within these waters, but not today. There is a newcomer to these parts, one that has a similar reputation and matches the megalodon in ferocity. This unknown creature intends to contest these hunting grounds. The challenger is the Leviathan. As the sea turtle takes this opportunity to swim away as fast as it's able, these two apex predators size each other up from a distance, preparing to establish who will reign as the supreme king of the sea. The megalodon dominated the ocean sometime between 3 to 23 million years ago, spreading to all corners of the globe, within seas surrounding Europe, Africa, the Americas, and Australia. Its focus is mainly on offshore areas where prey would be prominent, hunting sea turtles, whales, seals, dolphins, and other sharks. Its range was long, traveling between coastal and oceanic waters throughout different stages of its life cycle. Given that the territory they cover grows with each year they live, and the wide range of prey available to them, the megalodon's size can reach up to 67 feet in length. Armed with thick and robust teeth made for grabbing their prey and biting through bone, they have a 41,000-pound bite force, which is almost 4 times stronger than that of a T-Rex. Their tactics include ambushing their prey from below while ramming them into submission. With larger prey, they aim to disable them by biting at the fins, and once immobilized, biting through their chest. Their jaw is made up of around 276 frightening serrated edged teeth that are 7 inches long and jagged at the sides. The megalodon's competitor, the Leviathan, is armed with 22 large teeth of its own that come in various sizes, some up to 12 inches long. All are capable of piercing through its target. Excluding tusks in comparison, these are among the largest teeth that have ever existed on any known animal. Although it hasn't reached an overall equivalent size to the megalodon, its length is equally impressive, as it's capable of growing as large as 57 feet long. Mainly living within the southern hemisphere, they've only been around for a short while, existing from 9 to 10 million years ago. Although it hunts similar prey to the megalodon, it has a different strategic method of hunting, chasing its prey, tiring it out to the point of exhaustion, and then finishing it off by ramming it with its head and then biting it. It also has a more adaptive trait in its arsenal, its much larger brain. Being a warm-blooded mammal, it possesses superior intelligence, ensuring quicker thinking, with the ability to change its tactics at crucial moments. The megalodon acts on sheer instinct, and that has worked consistently for the past few million years. But will it work now? Although there are millions of years of difference between when these two behemoths existed and patrolled the seas, they shared a short period of time in history. But when they did overlap one another's territory, they created some of the most epic conflicts that have ever been had on Earth. This megalodon's turf has never been in contention until now. As the Leviathan approaches, observing the much larger megalodon, it's hesitant to make the first move, as generally, anything that it has come across before attempts to escape immediately, causing a chase to begin. The megalodon, however, never flees. The megalodon's instincts ensure it will act overconfident, and, as expected, it makes the first move. It swims at full speed, gliding through the water, aiming to ram the Leviathan. The Leviathan has no other choice but to do the same, rather than turning to flee and leaving itself unprotected. The two aquatic giants slice through the water on their way to meet fin to fin. The megalodon is puzzled that its foe is not turning tail to swim away, but it continues, as it has no reason to doubt victory from this tried and true tactic that has never failed before. As the megalodon approaches, it quickly turns to swim downward. It's faster and more agile than its opponent. It maneuvers below, gaining some distance. The Leviathan moves much slower and is unable to turn in time as the megalodon veers upward and rams it on its soft underbelly, attempting to force it into submission. There is little effect due to its size, and the Leviathan continues to turn, but it's far too slow as it attempts to bite with a desperate hope to grasp its attacker with its powerful jaws. The Megalodon easily swims away from its toothy trap, quickly retaliating by taking aim at the tail and fins, chipping away at little pieces as it bites, then quickly retreats, continuing this routine over and over, trying to disable the Leviathan's defenses. This tactic is effective, but it's taxing on the Megalodon as it's running out of energy. Still, it pushes hard to try and finish the hunt, using all the energy at its disposal, expecting that the struggle will not go on much longer. The Leviathan is outmatched. The speed of its combatant is far superior, and the constant chipping away at the fins and tail is becoming too costly. Upon realizing its abilities are surpassed and that it's helpless to resist the constant array of attacks, it attempts to swim away, maneuvering as it flees, desperately trying to obtain some distance from its aggressor. The Megalodon follows the Leviathan during its attempted escape, realizing this is a prime opportunity to finish the job. The Leviathan swipes its large tail as it swims, trying to repel any further attacks from the Megalodon. It hits the Megalodon and stops it in its path with every advance. As the Leviathan continues to swim away, it sustains energy with ease. The Megalodon, on the other hand, is quickly running out. The Leviathan's strategy is working as it continues to swim at a relaxed pace. The Megalodon eventually runs out of energy, unable to continue at the same pace, but its instinctual arrogance won't let go. In its evolution, it has never really needed to develop the ability to flee. There has never been a reason for it. Over millions of years, it's never been outmatched, but that is all changing now. As they press on, it's clear that this is a contest between a marathon swimmer and a sprinter. The Leviathan continues to conserve its energy wisely, while the Megalodon, starved of energy, continues to pursue, becoming slower with every flick of its tail, to the point that it's unable to maintain the chase. Upon realizing its foe is exhausted, the Leviathan turns toward the Megalodon. Now, with dominant speed and maneuverability, it spreads its massive jaws, grasping the Megalodon's spine, ending the struggle and ensuring its victory. The challenger, the Leviathan, is a novice in comparison to the ancient Megalodon, but thanks to evolution, it ensured its eventual victory. This guaranteed its reign as the top predator, and arguably the greatest predator to have existed on Earth. Unfortunately, it would only be a short reign. No, there wouldn't be a larger or more superior foe to take the mantle. The world would begin to change. The Earth would soon go through a cooling trend, which would cause the main prey of the Leviathan to go extinct. And without a food source to sustain this hulking beast, it was unable to continue. But this led to other similar predatory animals taking its place. The killer whale, sharing similar characteristics, eventually replaced its predecessor. The Megalodon would then retake the mantle by default due to the absence of its victor. Continuing with its prior successful strategy and broader food source, it ensured its prolonged survival. But as the seas cooled even further and became much shallower worldwide, it became more difficult for the Megalodon to reproduce. The suitable shallow areas that were necessary for nurseries quickly disappeared, and without these, the Megalodon too eventually went extinct. And just like its former opponent, other smaller sharks were able to adapt to these changes in the shallower waters, ensuring a more diverse pool of predators to dominate the seas.
It's a perfect summer day. You're relaxing on the beach, dipping your toes into the cool water, when suddenly, bam! A 56-foot aquatic nightmare rockets from the waves. It's the size of 2 London double-decker buses, sporting about 60 razor-sharp teeth, including bonus chompers on the roof of its mouth, because why not? This aquatic beast isn't picky about its diet either. Sharks? Turtles? Other sea monsters? Yep, they're all on the menu. Meet the mosasaur, a group of marine reptiles that ruled the oceans millions of years ago. If you've seen Jurassic World, you'll recognize them as the stars of that epic moment when a massive creature leaps out of the water to snatch a great white shark like it's sushi. That's a mosasaurus, and it's every bit as terrifying as it sounds. Recently, scientists stumbled upon a fossil of one of those marine monsters in, of all places, Mississippi. Yes, Mississippi, the land of magnolias and catfish. Turns out it's also home to ancient sea dragons. This discovery was a happy accident. A team of geologists was mapping the terrain in east-central Mississippi when they noticed something strange poking out of the ground. It wasn't a rock or a seashell. It was a vertebra, and a massive one. In fact, it was so large it barely fit in the hand of the scientist who found it. The fossil likely belonged to the largest known species of mosasaur, the Mosasaurus hoffmanni. Now, the biggest mosasaur ever found clocked in at a staggering 56 feet long. This new specimen hit a solid 30 feet at least, and while it might not break the world record, it certainly makes the crown for the biggest mosasaur ever discovered in Mississippi. Fun fact, that's still longer than the average RV, and with way worse gas mileage. To be fair, the Mississippi Museum of Natural Science already had a couple of mosasaur fossils in its collection. But this newcomer might just steal the spotlight. And this isn't an isolated incident. In 2015, paleontologists unearthed the skull of a 24-foot-long mosasaur in North Dakota. Years later, a private fossil hunter, yes, that's a thing, found an equally huge mosasaur in Texas. Well, its jaw at least. These sea monsters, also known as sea dragons, by the way, actually have one of the wildest origin stories in paleontology. The very first skull was found way back in 1764 in a chalk quarry in the Netherlands. And at the time, scientists thought it was a whale. Then came a second skull, which was so impressive that French revolutionaries literally looted it during the siege in 1794. Legend has it they swapped it for 600 bottles of wine. Doesn't sound like a fair trade to me. That fossil actually helped pioneer the concept of extinction and got paleontologists buzzing for centuries. Since then, mosasaur fossils have popped up all over the world, like ancient scaly celebrities leaving their mark. From the Mississippi backwoods to the deserts of Morocco, from New Jersey to Belgium, scientists have uncovered everything from teeth to full skulls, sometimes even misplacing them in museum drawers for centuries. So what exactly were these terrifying titans of the deep? Well, let's just say, if ancient oceans had a most likely to eat everything in sight award, the mosasaur would win it. Picture a gigantic scaly torpedo with a mouth full of about 60 razor-sharp teeth, including some growing on the roof of its mouth like dental overkill. It had a long, muscular tail for propulsion and 4 paddle-like limbs that worked like turbocharged oars, letting it cruise through warm, shallow seas like a reptilian speedboat. Scientists believe they were close relatives of modern monitor lizards and snakes, which honestly just makes both of those animals way more terrifying. Some mosasaurs even might have had adaptations for sensing vibrations in the water, allowing them to detect movement from a distance, similar to how sharks use electroreception today. Their eyes were well developed too, giving them sharp vision in the dim ocean depths, a key advantage when hunting fast or elusive prey. But what really makes mosasaurs the stuff of prehistoric nightmares is their attitude. They were apex predators, and they knew it. Those sea monsters weren't picky eaters. Fish, turtles, birds, sharks, other mosasaurs. Basically anything that moved was dinner. Fossilized mosasaur stomach contents prove they practiced family dinner in the most metal way possible. If they were around today, your beach day would be a lot more exciting. Probably shorter. These guys were so intense, they dominated the whole world. It's safe to say, mosasaurs were the undisputed rulers of the late Cretaceous oceans. And like today's orcas or great white sharks, they probably used ambush tactics, sneaking up on prey from below before striking with explosive force. Bite marks found on the fossilized bones of turtles and even other mosasaurs suggest intense underwater battles worthy of a blockbuster movie. But how did one end up in Mississippi of all places?
Well, rewind the clock about 80 million years and you'll find part of North America underwater. A vast, shallow sea known as the Western Interior Seaway split the continent in two, running from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Ocean. It was warm, teeming with life, and yes, crawling with sea monsters. This prehistoric seaway was a watery wonderland. Imagine long-necked plesiosaurs gliding through the water, birds with teeth diving for fish, and oysters the size of car tires clinging to reef-like structures. Even giant fish like this weird guy over here called it home. This ancient inland sea stretched over 600 miles wide in some places, but it was no more than a few hundred feet deep, making it ideal territory for predators like mesosaurs to thrive. The shallow depth also meant that their prey had few places to hide, turning the seaway into a prehistoric buffet. But the Western Interior Seaway wasn't a permanent fixture. As the Rocky Mountains rose, the seaway slowly disappeared. Over millions of years, it transformed from a shallow ocean to swamps and then to dry land. Today, what was once an ocean is now the Midwest, complete with cornfields, cows, and the occasional mosasaur vertebra hiding in the dirt. Now, this wasn't exactly the end of the mosasaurs. Sadly, even these monsters couldn't outswim extinction. Those massive sea beasts met their watery grave around 66 million years ago, when Earth got an unwelcome visitor, a 10-mile-wide asteroid. When that space rock slammed into what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, it unleashed destruction on a planetary scale. The impact triggered massive tsunamis, set forests ablaze, and shot so much debris into the atmosphere that sunlight was blocked out for months, maybe even years. This impact winter plunged Earth into a deep freeze. With sunlight gone, plants couldn't photosynthesize, and the food chain collapsed like a house of cards. On land, plant eaters starved, and predators like T-Rex soon followed. About 75% of all species on Earth disappeared. But don't think the oceans were a safe retreat. The seas were hit just as hard, if not worse. First came the mega tsunami that devastated marine life along coastlines. Then, the real villain arrived. You see, without sunlight, phytoplankton, those tiny microscopic plants that serve as the foundation of the marine food web, perished. With them went zooplankton, small fish and filter feeders. And when the buffet dried up, the big predators like the mosasaurs went hungry. No food, no future. With plunging temperatures and ocean acidification, even the ocean's top predators couldn't survive. Mosasaurs, along with plesiosaurs and ammonites, were wiped out in the blink of a geological eye. So ended the reign of sea monsters. The good news is that you can now swim at peace knowing that no sea dragon will ever come at you. I mean, it's a bummer that they went extinct, but let's be honest, beach days are way more relaxing without 56-foot lizards crashing the party. If you ever had a bad day at work, remember, it could be worse. At least you weren't caught by a 40-ton whale. You didn't spend 30 seconds trapped inside something alive, thinking, well, this is how it ends. Unlike the hero of our story, a lobster diver who became an accidental passenger carried around by a humpback whale. Thankfully, humpback whales can't swallow a human being for real. Not because we're not tasty, but because it's physically impossible. Despite being potentially really huge, their throats are surprisingly narrow, about the size of a grapefruit. When they open their mouths, they can be as big as a small bedroom, roughly 10 feet wide and 8 to 10 feet long. But once closed, there's barely any space inside, and you would end up wrestling with a tongue the size of a car. Also, humpbacks are filter feeders, not hunters. Instead of chewing or biting, they take in huge gulps of water. Then they close their mouths and push that water back out through their baleen plates, basically trapping krill and small fish like a giant living colander made for seafood. If something unexpected ends up inside, the whale says, "Oops, wrong food," and tries to get rid of it. Which was the good news for Michael Packard, a diver who had an encounter in 2021. While diving for lobsters, about 30 feet below the surface, he got ambushed. Suddenly, everything went dark. he felt pressure all around him and realized he was moving upward. He estimates that he spent 30 to 40 seconds inside the whale's mouth before it surfaced, shook around, and spat him out like a dog accidentally biting on a lemon. You see, when the whale realized that Michael Packard was not his dinner, it had to go to the surface. It's the only place a humpback can really spit something out properly. That's because whales are mammals, which means they have more in common with humans than most sea creatures. For example, they don't have gills like fish. Instead, they breathe air through blowholes on top of their heads, which are like giant nostrils. Every few minutes, they have to come up. The fascinating creature takes a breath and exhales a big blast of misty air that looks like a mini fountain. That famous whale spout is just a powerful exhale. Depending on the species, they can stay under the surface for 20 minutes to over an hour. But how is this possible? Basically, their lungs work like oxygen power banks, and their muscles are packed with myoglobin, a special protein that stores oxygen for long dives. When they submerge, their heart rate slows to just a few beats per minute, and blood flow is rerouted to only the organs that really need it. It's like their entire body switches to power-saving mode. And if that isn't impressive enough, humpbacks have a few more ocean superpowers, like being able to sing. And yes, that's the actual scientific term. Male humpbacks produce long pattern sequences of sounds that can last for hours. But they aren't random noises, they're structured, almost musical. Something best described as deep moans and high squeaks. But the coolest part is that these songs can travel for thousands of miles underwater. Sound moves much farther in water than in air, so the ocean becomes one giant concert hall. They can bounce and echo across the ocean, reaching whales miles away, like the sea's own radio station. Only male humpbacks are known to sing, and scientists think they do it mainly during the breeding season. Some believe it's a way to attract mates, while others think it helps them communicate or compete with other males. What's amazing is that all the males in one region sing the same song, but it slowly changes over time. Basically, every year the males all sing roughly the same tune, but as the season goes on, tiny variations start to appear. They sing the same song until one of them gets inspired, changes the tune slightly, and this version becomes trendy. Sometimes the whole song gets replaced by a completely new one that moves across the seas from one population to another. Scientists think whales are basically learning from one another, passing new hit singles across the ocean. Humpback whales are known for taking the longest road trips in the animal kingdom. They migrate thousands of miles from cold feeding grounds near the poles to warm waters where they mate and raise calves. And they sure love to eat, sometimes up to 20 hours straight. When the humpback whale accidentally caught Mr. Packard, it couldn't just get rid of him underwater and keep feeding. Humpbacks are built to close their mouths tightly when they dive, so water doesn't rush into their lungs. To open up wide again, release pressure, and breathe, they have to reach the surface. They gulp air, clear their throats, spit out unwanted passengers, and go back to eating like nothing happened. It's actually a cool design from millions of years of evolution. Whales used to live on land long ago. Their ancient ancestors looked a bit like furry hippos that wandered into the ocean. Over millions of years, those animals adapted to life in water. Their legs became fins, their noses slid to the tops of their heads, but they never stopped breathing air. That's how evolution works. It doesn't recreate something from scratch, it adapts what's already there. This evolutionary coincidence was what, in the end, saved Mr. Packard. After the whale spat him out, Packard floated in shock for a few seconds before realizing that everything was fine. His crewmate, who'd seen the whale breach and fling him out, rushed over and pulled him into the boat. Thankfully, aside from bruises, he was fine. The diver was taken to the hospital, treated, and released on the same day. All is well that ends well, and now he has a fascinating tale to retell to his friends. While a humpback whale couldn't swallow Michael, there are a few creatures on Earth that technically could, at least on paper. First on the list, the sperm whale. It's the only animal alive today with a throat large enough to swallow a whole person. They regularly feed on giant squids up to 30 or 40 feet long, so one human wouldn't even count as an appetizer. Luckily for us, sperm whales live in deep waters and only eat squid, fish, and the occasional unlucky shark. Humans aren't even close to the right shape or taste. On the land, we have the reticulated python and the green anaconda, the largest snakes on the planet. These reptiles don't chew, they swallow. A full-grown python can stretch its jaws wide enough to fit a deer or a pig, and an anaconda can take down a capybara. There are unverified reports of them swallowing people, mostly in remote jungle areas. But even if it happened, it would take hours, and the snake would struggle to digest such a big meal. Unfortunately, snakes don't have the same diaphragm or ticklish response like mammals, which means you wouldn't get out of this predicament by tickling the serpent like in a cartoon. And that's about it, lucky for us. Unless we go back in time, way back to prehistoric times, to an age when the oceans and continents were crawling with bigger creatures. Back then, the ocean was a lot more dangerous. The Mosasaurus ruled the seas like a super crocodile, and the Megalodon, the 60-foot prehistoric shark, could have swallowed you whole without noticing. But land wasn't much safer. There was the Dinosuchus, the giant crocodile, the Titan boa, a snake longer than a bus, and the Sarcosuchus, the super croc that made rivers unsafe for anything that moved. Michael Packard lived through a story that sounds perfect for an Instagram reel. He had a unique and dangerous situation and ended up with only bruises and bragging rights. The ocean is full of surprises, but as long as you're not a small fish or a time traveler, you won't end up like Pinocchio, making a campfire inside a large stomach resembling a cave.
A pod of dolphins is happily playing near the water's surface in the North Pacific Ocean on a sunny day. They're about as happy as can be until the surface of the water begins to ripple. It becomes more pronounced, like a possible tsunami or an underwater volcano preparing to blast. Their instincts tell them to hightail it out of there, but they don't know which way is the safest path out. Abruptly, a tremendous roaring sound fills the air. The water explodes outwards as a giant whale bursts into the air. Hello, mama! Wait, that's no whale. It's an ichthyosaur, a giant sea dragon type monster from the Triassic period. It's a massive 55 feet long and weighs 45 tons. It doesn't look too dissimilar to a dolphin, but this sea monster isn't any cousin. The dolphins scatter back beneath the water. Fortunately for them, the ichthyosaur is not interested in having them for lunch. It's merely playing as well. This particular species is far more used to eating marine mollusks, smaller fish, and squid. But there's nothing in sight, so it disappears back below the surface, swimming majestically with its huge fins and long eel-like tail. It had once roamed the land, but like other prehistoric land reptiles, including modern-day whales and dolphins, it returned to the sea and evolved over millions of years. Its limbs have been transformed into flippers. Some species had digits on their flippers, or phalanges. They could almost pass for human hands. Well, hello there. Some possessed a dorsal fin. Their heads were pointed, and their jaws contained conical teeth to catch smaller prey. They had large eyes, probably used for seeing in deep waters. Their tail fin made for a powerful stroke. Like some other sea creatures, they could breathe air and were warm-blooded. They were sleek and as beautiful as some of today's ocean creatures. Unexpectedly, an underwater time vortex opens in front of it, sucking in everything in its path like an underwater black hole. The ichthyosaur disappears inside, flailing about, unable to control its journey back into the deep past. Soon, it spat out again into its own natural timeline of the Triassic period, during the early dinosaur age, approximately 247 million years ago. It swims with others of its kind. They lived in herds or hunting groups, while varying forms evolved worldwide, such as the smaller Mixosaurus. Let's stay with this one, because it will eventually find its way into modern human hands. In evolutionary terms, the ichthyosaurs lasted for a very long time, millions of years. There are many complex factors involved with how they became extinct, but in simplistic terms, environmental changes brought out declines in smaller food groups and more brutal predatory groups. Some fish had evolved as well and became too fast for the ichthyosaur. So we will leave our poor friend here, unable to find enough food and losing out to the tougher competition. It's hungry, tired, and weak. It simply drifts away with the currents, eventually finding itself resting on the ocean floor. Millions of years passed. During the Triassic and Jurassic era, sea levels gradually ebb away, exposing vast regions of the desert. The area we're focusing on became Nevada, in the western part of the United States. During the Cretaceous period, a volcanic island chain formed. Geological upheaval continued, bringing the ocean floor up into modern mountains. Embedded in the rock, well, you can guess, not only ancient invertebrates, but more modern creatures such as mammoths and giant sloths. What an incredible array of wildlife! But we're not here for them today. Let's find out what happened to our friend. Jump forward in time again to 1998. The place, the Augusta Mountains of northwestern Nevada, or more specifically, a place called Fossil Hill. Protruding out of the rock were a few vertebrae. Researchers could tell whatever creature it belonged to. It was clearly enormous. It was so embedded in the rock and complex that the excavation took many years. In September of 2011, the excavators found more of the beast, the well-preserved skull, forelimbs, and chest region. It wasn't until 2015 that the now obviously giant ichthyosaur could be fully extracted. The surviving fossils were a skull the size of a fully grown man, a shoulder, and a flipper-like appendage. Even then, it took a helicopter to move it. The team named the new species Symbospondylus youngorum. Symbospondylus is a Greek word meaning spine. Let's call this one Ichthyosaur spiny from now on, because it should have a name by now. And let's face it, it's a lot easier to pronounce. Spiny was airlifted to the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles and further shipped to the University of Bonn in Germany. The study was undertaken by vertebrate paleontologist Martin Sander and his colleagues while collaborating with the University of Mainz. It was a unique and truly electrifying find, as the marine reptile was the largest animal ever discovered from this time. As far as we know, stated Martin Sandler, it was even the first giant creature ever to inhabit the Earth. You can think of Spiny as the underwater T-Rex of his time. He's also quite remarkable, as his type lived only 3 to 5 million years after a mass extinction event, known as the Great Dying. It happened roughly 252 million years ago. It took out approximately 90% of the world's life forms. What caused it? The short version is elevated temperatures and increased acidification in the oceans. Once one part of the food chain extinguishes, it causes a domino effect, as you can imagine. Soon, there's little left to eat, and only the sturdiest can survive. The atmosphere also had high levels of carbon dioxide. Theories argue that giant volcanic eruptions caused this in Siberia, known as the Siberian Traps. It was the largest volcanic eruption in the past 500 million years. The eruptions lasted a staggering 2 million years. Large volumes of basaltic lava covered a large area of Siberia. Even today, the site is covered by about 3 million square miles of basaltic rock. Other theories say that an asteroid caused the Great Dying, rather than the volcanoes. In any regard, the impact was the same, and 81% of Earth's marine species and 70% of the land-based vertebrate species were no more. There have been numerous mass extinction events, but Spiny's size and existence are extraordinary compared to the Great Dying. It usually took 9 million years for species to recover and grow to this size, but he came into being in less than half that time. Using sophisticated computer models, the researchers examined the likely food web running through the area now known as Fossil Hill. They recreated the ancient environment through the available data, finding that marine food webs must have supported giant creatures like the ichthyosaurs. The theory is that our Spiny fed on a diverse and rich diet of marine mollusks, known as ammonoids, that flourished from 1 to 3 million years after the Great Dying. The now extinct ammonites filled the ecological void following the mass extinction and had excellent living conditions without much prey to interfere with them. Ichthyosaurs also evolved rapidly because they were the first more giant creatures to populate the world's oceans. The mollusks they fed off were also exposed to less competition. Spiny had a massive food supply. He chowed down like there was no tomorrow. Unlike whales that become large due to eating foods like plankton, Spiny and his fellow species grew big on the ammonites, and it took them a much shorter time. That's a good message for you kids to eat healthily. The exciting thing for us today is that these results show that marine ecosystems can build up and respond well to such dramatic changes as climate, atmosphere, or water conditions. They may have had different pathways, but some ichthyosaurs and whales have similarities. They both have large sizes and a lack of prominent teeth. Sperm whales dive deep to hunt giant squid. Spiny hunted similarly. They use a type of filter feeding to extract the food from the water. Our friend likely ate fish and possibly squid, and ever smaller ichthyosaurs. Ouch. Other ichthyosaur forms had lots of teeth, with a skull more like a giant lizard. They had razor-sharp teeth. Ichthyosaurs swam the ancient oceans for nearly the whole of the dinosaur age. Ichthyosaur fossils have been found in many other countries, such as England, Norway, Japan, Germany, Colombia, China, and Australia. They were the underwater planet rulers of their day. As the sun sets 250 million years ago, we might imagine Spiny having a better outcome than he ultimately did, and popping his head out of the water to watch the orange hues of the pristine sky. He pauses for a moment before, once again, dipping underwater to join his friends, swimming happily away with the herd, looking for food and adventure in the deep blues of the Triassic Ocean. Think you know what lurks in the depths of the ocean? While nearly 95% of our oceans haven't been explored yet, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. But thanks to brave explorers, deep-sea cameras, and awesome archaeologists, we do know about some pretty incredible sea creatures living in our waters today, and millions of years ago. From the 9-foot spider crab to the 60-foot prehistoric megalodon, these sea dwellers come in all shapes and sizes. But let's focus on sea creatures famous for their huge size. Can you guess which living species of whale is the largest? Well, it's not the orca, but that's a good guess. The orca is a toothed whale that can grow to anywhere from 23 feet to 32 feet, which is slightly smaller than a school bus. How about the narwhal? Nope, they're not the biggest either. These unicorns of the sea live mainly in Arctic waters and only grow 13 feet to 20 feet in length, and that's including their 9-foot tusk. Tired of guessing? Okay, I give in. The largest whale that still exists today is the blue whale. At a jaw-dropping 82 feet to 105 feet, the blue whale is not only the biggest whale we know of, but is currently the largest animal to have ever lived on Earth. Seriously. These animals are bigger than a T-Rex, and even the prehistoric megalodon. If you were to put a blue whale next to a school bus, it would look like it could swallow it. Think about that. According to National Geographic, a blue whale's tongue can weigh the same as an elephant. And their hearts can weigh as much as a car. That doesn't even sound possible. It's no wonder these giants need to eat about 4 tons of krill every day. While there aren't too many animals living today that can compete with the blue whale's epic proportions, there is an entirely different species that is a good contender, and it's not quite what you would expect. It's a jellyfish. No, I'm not talking about the little jellyfish that wash up on the shore and ruin a perfectly good day at the beach. I'm referring to the lion's mane jellyfish, the biggest jellyfish around. This invertebrate can grow up to 120 feet long. They also come in different gorgeous colors like red, purple, or even shades of orange. As if their length wasn't impressive, the lion's mane jellyfish boast a whopping 8 sets of 70 to 150 tentacles. That means they can have up to 1,200 in total. And here's the giant oceanic manta ray, the largest type of ray in the world. Their wingspan can be longer than a bus. These guys can reach 30 feet in length. They also have the biggest brain compared to body size among all fish. Unlike their stingray cousins, mantas don't have venomous tails. And while the lion's mane jellyfish and the blue whale are yet to be beaten for the longest sea creature, there is one marine creature that can grow even larger in length. The Portuguese Physalia physalis, tentacles and all, can reach a length of 165 feet long, and that's according to mentalfloss.com. While this thing may look a lot like a jellyfish, it's actually known as a siphonophore, and there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of them that are genetically identical. Their long tentacles help the organism catch prey, and its sting is fatal to most animals, even humans in some cases. What's even creepier is that if one of the tentacles comes off the organism for whatever reason, it can float around the water for days before decomposing. Even if it's detached, this tentacle can still sting you. But don't go running out of the ocean just yet. Your chances of being hurt by a Portuguese Physalia physalis sting are pretty slim. However, if you do get stung, the side effects aren't pretty, with welts, stomach cramps, an elevated heart rate, and an upset stomach. While you don't want to go anywhere near these long creatures, they sure are pretty to look at. Check out all those colors. The Shastasaurus is the biggest marine reptile that has ever existed. These predators lived during the late Triassic period, about 210 million years ago. These amazing giants could reach lengths of up to 69 feet and weighed more than 75 tons. This made the Shastasaurus as heavy as a blue whale. And if you could stand this creature up vertically, it'd be as tall as a 7-story building. Despite appearances, the Shastasaurus was actually pretty slim for its size. Its ribcage was only 6 feet across. You'd think that this big guy was chowing down on other dinosaurs, but that's not the case at all. This reptile survived on a diet that consisted of small fish and cephalopods, like octopuses and squids. The Albertonectes is a bright representative of the plesiosaur family, meaning that this marine reptile had a small head on an incredibly long neck and large flipper-like limbs that helped it move through the water. These creatures occupied the seas around North America 76 to 70 million years ago. The length of this sea monster could reach 38 feet, with its neck taking up 23 feet of that length. Its neck was a true record breaker. It had a whopping 76 bones in it. No other animal known to humankind has had so many vertebrae in its neck. Scientists aren't sure why they needed such a lengthy neck. They might have used it to collect shellfish off the seabed, or perhaps it helped them capture their main prey, fish and squids. This aquatic reptile also had gastroliths in its stomachs. Some of them were as big as 5.5 inches in diameter. The Tylosaurus belonged to the Mosasaur family. It dominated the shallow seas of North America about 85 to 80 million years ago. This was an enormous predator, with the biggest representatives reaching 45 feet in length. It had a narrow hydrodynamic body with a blunt, powerful head that the animal used to ram and stun its prey. Its body was equipped with agile flippers and a long tail decorated with a maneuverable fin. The Tylosaurus was a carnivore, and its diet included not only fish, turtles, and small sharks, but also other mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and flightless birds. Meet Ophthalmosaurus. This prehistoric reptile thrived during the late Jurassic period and lived in oceans all over the world. Ophthalmosaurus weighed somewhere around 6,000 pounds and grew to approximately 16 feet long, according to newdinosaurs.com. That's about the same length as the beluga whale that exists today. It's too bad these guys went extinct before we had a chance to see them ourselves, as their cartoonish wide eyes and dolphin-like features are pretty darn cute. Of course, the Ophthalmosaurus evolved over time to become ophthalmologists, or eye doctors that we know today. No, that's just a lie. Just testing you. The Mosasaurus is a truly gigantic predator that dominated the seas all over the world about 66 million years ago. According to fossil evidence, some specimens could be more than 50 feet in length. This fact makes the Mosasaurus the biggest marine carnivore of its time. One of the most terrifying things about this creature was its crocodile-like head, decorated with literally hundreds of razor-sharp teeth, neatly organized in 2 rows on both jaws. The thing is that it was pretty challenging for the Mosasaurus to grab its prey in the water. That's why it had all these teeth, plus something special: pterygoid teeth anchored to the bones on the roof of its mouth. This made hunting and holding onto its prey much easier. The Styxosaurus belonged to the plesiosaur family and lived during the late Cretaceous period, around 85 to 70 million years ago. Upon first glance at this dinosaur, you might mistake it for a sea snake, and it'd be an honest mistake.
The water is bubbling under the fishing boat as if something is coming up out of the water. It gets closer and closer. The water seems to boil. Suddenly, you see giant jaws and glistening teeth. Seconds later, a huge shark jumps out of the water and crushes the boat in one bite. It was the Megalodon, the largest fish that ever existed on Earth. Now, we pictured the Megalodon as this, an enlarged version of the white shark for a long time. But scientists continue to argue about its appearance. So far, they agree that the image of this giant shark was wrong. Here's the data that scientists are sure of. Size, about 50 feet long. That's as big as a school bus and comparable to the length of a subway car. 8.5 times the height of an average person. Let's compare it to the modern white shark. The Megalodon is 3 times bigger, but that's just a rough estimate. We don't have a fully preserved skeleton of the Megalodon. That's because it didn't have any bones, but cartilage. Not much of that left in the 3.6 million years since the Megalodons went extinct. All that survived were teeth and a few vertebrae. By comparison, dinosaurs went extinct about 66 million years ago. But their solid bones are perfectly preserved, and we have many different examples of their skeletons. Scientists have calculated the size of a megalodon based on its teeth and jaw. Now, this is one tooth. It's about 7 inches long, bigger than the palm of your hand, and 3 times the size of a modern white shark's teeth. The megalodon jaw was 6 feet wide and chalked up 5 rows of teeth, a total of 276 razor-sharp chompers. The other preserved remains are the vertebral column. It consists of 150 vertebrae, each 6 inches wide. They contain much calcium because, well, megalodon love fresh cold milk. Nah, it's because the vertebrae had to withstand the enormous mass of a giant shark. Based on those fossils, scientists created a model and calculated only the approximate size of the megalodon. But it could hardly have been any bigger. It's all about breathing. The bigger the fish, the more oxygen it needs, which means a larger gill area. That's the organ that filters the water and collects oxygen. If the megalodon were any larger, it would have trouble breathing. So, scientists believe that 50 feet is the maximum size of an individual. On average, they were a few feet smaller. Now, let's talk weight. On average, one megalodon weighed about 30 to 35 tons. By comparison, a white shark weighs 1 ton, which is 30 times less. Hey, trust me. A school bus is 4 times lighter at 7.5 tons. The weight of a megalodon can be compared to an empty Boeing 737. But the modern blue whale beats the megalodon in size and weight. 98 feet long versus 50, almost twice as long. Blue whale's weight is about 180 tons. That's like 6 megalodons or 6 passenger planes, or like 33 adult elephants. Hey, don't you love the comparisons? Now, about the appearance of the megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a white shark. The megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin is moved backwards. The sand shark has 2 dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly and may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here's the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. We also have the evidence that megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The megalodon was a slow swimmer, though. It could only accelerate up to 11 miles per hour. In comparison, the modern white shark can reach 35 miles per hour in a dash for its meal. The fastest human swimmer could only go 6 miles per hour. Well, good luck with that. But the megalodon had incredible mass. Though slow, its battering ram had tremendous power. The megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the megalodon was comparable to a large truck. But if the ram was successful, the prey was stunned and couldn't move. At this point, the megalodon aimed at vulnerable spots, like the fins and tail of the prey. Scientists have found many ancient whale remains with megalodon tooth marks. It turned out that the giant shark knew where its prey's vital organs were located and could strike at them. When the prey was immobilized, the megalodon bared its teeth. An adult person could easily fit into its open jaw at full height. And according to various estimates, the bite force of the megalodon was almost 11 tons. Now imagine the weight of 3 SUVs concentrated at the tip of a sharp tooth. That's 9 times the power of the largest white shark bite, and 6 times the power of the modern record holder for biting, the saltwater crocodile. Here, look at a map of where the remains of the megalodon were found. South and North America, Europe, Asia, Australia. It was the master of all seas and was comfortable anywhere on our planet. We've even found some remains of the giant shark in freshwater sediments. Perhaps it wasn't afraid to enter rivers to hunt. Now, other scientists say that maybe the megalodon wasn't even a predator, all because of its size. It couldn't swim fast. It couldn't even make short dashes like the white shark. If prey tried to escape, the megalodon didn't rush into pursuit because it could never catch up with it. Another problem is the skeleton of the megalodon. The cartilage is weaker than the bones, so the musculature of the giant shark was not as massive and robust in the first place. The megalodon may even have been a scavenger and never got into fights. This is one of the reasons why ancient sharks became extinct. Megalodons like shallow, warm waters, with temperatures ranging from 53 degrees Fahrenheit. But over 3 million years ago, the climate turned colder. This deprived the megalodons of territories and plenty of food. The primitive whales that had been the main diet of the giant sharks began to disappear. Faster predators took the remnants of food. The megalodon started to starve. In evolution, a new player entered the field, the toothed whales, ancestors of the modern killer whales. They lived in packs and had bigger brains than the megalodon. So, over time, they started to compete with the megalodon. They took advantage of its clumsiness. A group of killer whales could easily win a competition against a giant shark. Many scientists believe this was the reason for the disappearance of the largest shark in the world. But there are theories that the megalodon is still alive and roaming the dark waters of our planet. Several Australian fishers have allegedly encountered a shark of incredible size, but no one can confirm these testimonies. Fans of this theory believe that giant sharks can hide in deep waters away from human eyes. In the Mariana Trench, for example, it's the deepest place on our planet. It's deeper than if you stuck Mount Everest in the water, and we've even found the teeth of a megalodon there. But science says that such a giant shark couldn't live in the Mariana Trench for many reasons. One, it's too cold. The megalodon was probably a cold-blooded fish, so it had to use the warmth of its environment to survive. But the water in the Mariana Trench is cold, about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because the deeper down, the less sunlight gets in there. The second reason is pressure. Every 30 feet deep increases the pressure by 1 atmosphere. That is, at the depth of 100 feet, the water presses you 3 times harder than you would feel it at the surface. The weak muscles and cartilage of the megalodon wouldn't allow it to dive too deep into the Mariana Trench. And most importantly, food. The farther from the ocean's surface, the fewer living organisms. Megalodons used to eat primitive whales, ranging from 10 to 20 feet. Small fish only inhabit the Mariana Trench. A megalodon would never be able to catch one. And, judging by its size, all the megalodon did was eat and then look for food again. Compare its weight to that of a human. The average human should get about 2,000 calories a day with an average weight of about 180 pounds. The megalodon weighed 470 times that and needed many more calories. So, even all the fish inhabiting the Mariana Trench could hardly feed a megalodon for even a few days. So, all these theories, of course, are not true. But still, it's just smart to be careful out there. Know what I mean?
The megalodon shark roamed the oceans, scaring and chewing everything to pieces long after the dinosaurs were wiped out by the great meteorite. We know that it was the largest and most dangerous hunter that ever lived, as well as the biggest shark. It was the king of all seas, swimming freely between most parts of the ocean. But then, about 2.5 million years ago, the last of its kind disappeared from Earth forever, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. And it could be because of the great white sharks. The megalodon is usually described as a sort of gigantic version of this marine animal. This is a common misconception people make because these creatures were thought to be related. In fact, the Meg looked more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and long and massive pectoral fins that supported its weight. And what's more important, the ancestors of today's great whites existed at the same time as the megalodon. But with great size comes great clumsiness. Although the Meg was huge and powerful, it was also not as nimble as the smaller and quicker great white sharks. Researchers believe that great whites actually rivaled with the megalodon for food and were often more successful hunters thanks to their agility. They couldn't fight the Meg openly, but were fast enough to steal its food. So, the only food left for the megalodon were whales and equally big marine animals. Adult Megs could easily catch such beasts, but their offspring were much smaller and more vulnerable than their parents. Scientists believe other sharks could have used this to their advantage. While the megalodon was still little, it often became a meal for great whites, bull, and tiger sharks. Even then, a great white shark could be almost 20 feet long, while a megalodon pup was typically twice as small. A pretty easy meal for a great white. But even if there had been no open confrontation between young megalodons and smaller adult sharks, Meg pups wouldn't have been able to find food for themselves to grow to adulthood. The population of other sharks was growing, and they were rivaling with each other and the Megs for food. The more great whites and other sharks there were, the less food remained for the young monster sharks. Eventually, they would have simply starved. As if this wasn't enough for the megalodon to cease to exist, their favorite big munch, the whales, began to adapt to changing conditions on Earth. The Meg was a warmth-loving shark, and it was abundant in tropical and subtropical waters. When they first evolved, about 20 million years ago, the climate on the planet was much milder. Both land and seas were generally warmer, and so the Meg could swim and eat wherever it pleased. As years went by, the climate went on changing though. It became extremely cold closer to the poles, and lots of marine animals and fish had to adapt to this temperature shift. But the megalodon didn't cope as well. It still loved warm waters, so it stayed where it felt comfortable, even if that area was shrinking. What it didn't realize was that whales were among those who became okay with the cold. The big marine mammals went further north, and Meg was left without a supper.
It was the largest fish our Earth had ever seen, and its bite was strong enough to crush a car. The largest of its teeth found was the length of a remote control. It consumed about 2,500 pounds of food a day. That's like 3,300 cans of tuna for you. The earliest megalodon fossils are from about 20 million years ago, but you won't see its skeleton, and that's because the mighty Meg had no bones. A skeleton made from bones gives most animals their body shape and strength. Sharks, though, come from the same subclass as rays, skates, and sawfish and have cartilage instead of bones. Cartilage is a tissue that is softer and more flexible than bones, but it's still tough enough to shape the body and protect the internal organs. Some areas are more flexible, since cartilage is weaker, and some, like the shark's head, are much tougher thanks to calcified cartilage. Their snouts, though, are made of really soft and flexible cartilage to work like a bumper in case of a collision with some dangers. Who knows if they'd be able to do all this with a heavy skeleton? Plus, cartilage makes their jaws more flexible, and they can open their mouths much wider than they would with a jaw made of bone. Our hero, Meg, was no exception, and it had the strongest bite of all living creatures, which was also made possible by a skeleton made of cartilage. Sharks take full advantage of their cartilage. It helps them swim and turn fast while hunting. One drawback of this type of skeleton is that it was really tricky for scientists to establish the shape and size of Meg. Normally, they would do it using fossilized bone skeletons or their parts. With Meg, they had to guess based on the teeth they found and comparisons with living relatives. A more recent 3D computer model was based partially on scans of a preserved spine discovered in the 1860s. The model showed that Meg was bigger, faster, and even hungrier than scientists had previously thought. Looks like an average megalodon was 52 feet long. That's slightly bigger than the height of the Hollywood sign and weighed 10 times as heavy as an elephant. There were also much bigger creatures. Scientists still aren't sure how the megalodon got this size. The fact that there were bigger and smaller Megs probably has to do with a little something called Bergmann's rule. It says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The megalodons that reached cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. Those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. If the researchers were correct in their calculations, it also means that Meg reached a cruising speed of over 3 miles per hour, which is much faster than other sharks. The still-living great white shark can cover a distance of nearly 7,000 miles without stopping, which is 9/10 as long as the diameter of Earth. It looks like the megalodon could have gone much further. Megalodons managed to survive on our planet for nearly 70 times longer than humans have. They were roaming the oceans for around 20 million years, and you could see them pretty much anywhere except near the poles. Scientists discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The reason why there were no megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is most likely that these adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones like to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. When our planet went through a period of global cooling and drying, and the seas began to freeze around 3.6 million years ago, there was less and less room for Meg to thrive. Much of their prey, like smaller whales, seals, and sea turtles, disappeared or relocated to waters that were too cold for our hero. And at the same time, the number of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks, like the great white shark, and whales, increased. This shifting food chain dynamics could have been even more dangerous for the Meg than the cold ocean water. You're used to seeing them on the big screen as heartless monsters, but these huge sharks were actually loving and caring family guys. Scientists discovered several megalodon nursery areas in Florida, Maryland, Panama, and off the coast of Spain. It looks like they gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. Then, little Megs would stay there with adults protecting and raising them until they were ready to fight off predators. The mighty Meg had 276 teeth in 5 rows in its mouth. Similar to other sharks, it was fast in replacing its worn-out or lost teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, able to grow back damaged or missing teeth. This means that an adult megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. Although the great white shark is often mentioned as Meg's closest relative, they'd hardly be distant cousins. The ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best friends and even rivaled each other. The great white shark wouldn't win in a head-to-head fight with a Meg, but it was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the giant's prey quickly. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. Rather than a great white, the megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. We also speak of Meg as an extinct giant, but can we be 100% sure it isn't hiding somewhere as we speak? After all, we've only explored 5% of our oceans altogether. The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth, and you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in its deepest part, and over a mile of it would still be above the surface. If a megalodon or two needed a place to hide, that would be the perfect spot. It wouldn't be the coziest place to live, though, with its cold water and total darkness. Plus, the pressure there is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So, if a Meg really were hiding down there, it would have serious issues with its teeth, because calcium would dissolve under that pressure. To survive here, it would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means it would have either become bioluminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. If the Meg were still around and true to its dietary choices, it would have to eat smaller fish, and that would be a problem for us humans. Especially those of us who love fish, that is. And the ocean isn't cooling down these days. The megalodon would love its temperature and would thrive and reproduce faster than ever. Those giants would create some massive problems for cargo ships and cruising vessels. In case you're now scared at the thought of meeting a megalodon, relax. Most scientists don't think it's possible because of our hero's size. Most foods that megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Meg would need to come up for dinner every now and then, and it's kinda hard to miss a creature this big. They're both giant prehistoric creatures to us, but the megalodons and the dinosaurs never actually coexisted. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later.
So imagine stumbling upon a creature so huge it could dwarf even the largest known marine animals today. Scientists discovered the fossils of this beast on England's coast and believe it once ruled the waves. The new species was named Ichthyotitan severnensis, but thankfully for me, scientists nicknamed it the Little Stock Monster. Its estimated lengths range from 72 to 85 feet long, almost as big as a blue whale. Megalodon can't even compare to this. It was only about 60 feet long. And what's crazy is that this fossil we found wasn't even an adult, so who knows what their actual size was. The first piece of the Little Stock Monster was discovered in 2016 in the Westbury Formation. Researchers found a 3-foot-long jaw part that belonged to an unknown species. For years, this single fragment had been driving them crazy because they had no idea what that animal was. Then, in 2020, a miracle happened, of sorts. A father with his 11-year-old daughter found the second piece of fossil on a beach. This discovery led to more findings. Finally, in 2022, the last piece of the literal jaw puzzle was found, buried along the Somerset coast. This leviathan belonged to the Shastasaurid family. Both the Little Stock Monster and other Shastasaurids had one ancestor, so all the species in this family are super similar to each other. For example, all of them were the largest marine reptiles ever to exist. Although our Little Stock Monster is much larger, most Shastasaurids could grow up to only 69 feet long, and it's possible that the Little Stock Monster, when fully grown, would reach up to 100 feet or even more. Both of their bodies were just perfect for cruising the ancient seas. These marine titans were elegant and slender, with an elongated snout. Other marine animals at the time were smaller and looked more like dolphins. Shastasaurids had long paddle-like limbs adapted for efficient swimming. Their skulls show large eye sockets, which means they had excellent vision. If you were in the ocean, no matter what time it was or where you were hiding, they could spot you. They were also incredibly fast and could dive to great depths. Of course, all these things made them the most terrifying predators. They ate pretty much everything, including fish and squid, and you if you were there. They probably captured their prey like whales, opened their huge mouths, and literally sucked the fish in. What made the Lilstock monster especially scary is that it wins in the jaw competition. For other shastosaurids, their jaws were a bit weaker, so they hunted smaller fish, kind of like today's orcas. They required vast amounts of food. This shows us that the Earth's Triassic oceans had rich, productive food webs. But the Lilstock monster has this unique feature. It could open its jaw almost 90 degrees upwards. It also had tons of powerful muscles around. Its jaws were horrifyingly strong. So while others were hunting some squids, the Lilstock monster probably hunted large fish and even other marine reptiles. Fossils of shastosaurids have been found everywhere in the world, from North America to Asia. This means that these creatures dominated and terrorized the oceans for millions of years, although even they weren't completely safe from scavengers. And that's exactly why we struggle to find these fossils now. Scavengers didn't leave any remnants of them. So, while we have some fossils of this marine family, they mostly remain a mystery for us. They lived in the oceans about 200 million years ago, in the late Triassic period. The Earth looked completely different back then. All continents were united in one Pangaea, a huge landmass. Some parts of this supercontinent were covered with lush conifer forests, while others were dry deserts and open prairies. It was before the famous Jurassic period, but there were already first pterosaurs and amphibians. It seems like those monsters were crazy resilient. The Triassic period was super unstable, but they survived through many changes in the environment. Well, until the last one. The Triassic extinction came out of nowhere. It was one of the Earth's big 5 extinction events. It wiped out almost all species on the planet, including these leviathans. It's still not clear what happened exactly, but it looks like there was a huge tectonic activity. Volcanoes in the oceans were going crazy back then. These massive volcanic eruptions have probably altered the climate and ocean chemistry, leading to the extinction of many species. Scientists have a theory that it might have happened because there was a rain of comets flying to our planet from the Oort cloud. This likely happens about every 200 million years or so. I wasn't around then, so I'm just guessing here. In any case, after the extinction, the Earth took some time to recover. Then it entered the famous Jurassic period. More terrifying sea monsters were on the way. One of them left us a colossal skull. This fossil is 150 million years old, and it also belonged to a sea beast from Jurassic times. They called it the Sea Rex. The name is very fitting. This monster could have broken a car in half with one bite. It was also discovered accidentally. A fossil enthusiast was walking along the Jurassic coast. This place is famous for having tons of ancient fossils, all because of the erosion in stormy weather. Typically, people find small spiral fossils here. However, this time, he discovered a giant sea monster fossil. Excited, he contacted scientists. They arrived at the spot right away and then had to carefully climb down a cliff to search for the rest of the skull. This fragment alone is 6.5 feet long. Turns out, it's a newly discovered species of pliosaurs, giant predators of the ancient seas. Pliosaurs were among the largest marine predators ever. Some of them grew up to 40 feet long. They used their huge teeth to snatch and devour prey, including other reptiles. Well, at least those creatures are far gone. But what about the horrors that still live in our oceans? Recently, biologists discovered the world's longest animal, the one that's still alive to this day. They found it off Australia's coast, on the Gascoyne coast, a very mysterious and unexplored place. There, underwater vehicles stumbled upon a frightening 150-foot-long siphonophore. That's twice as long as many blue whales and 3 times as long as a humpback whale. Doesn't it kind of look like one of those toy string worms? But this creature isn't friendly at all. It's a string-like deep-sea predator. What's even more scary is that this isn't actually one creature. It's a colony of small clones working together as one. Basically, collective consciousness. Ooh, Borg. Together, they stretch out like a single long string in the water. This creature might be the longest siphonophore ever found, and it was discovered at a depth of around 2,000 feet. Siphonophores, similar to jellyfish, capture their prey by dangling stinging tentacles in the water. When their tentacles touch small crustaceans and fish, they get paralyzed. and then they're reeled up to the colony's body. Expeditions to Western Australia's underwater canyons were definitely worth it. Together with that siphonophore, scientists have discovered up to 30 potential new marine species. Among them were a new octopus or squid, a long-tailed sea cucumber, glass sponges, and giant hyroids, colonies of animals resembling upside-down jellyfish. None of them have been seen before in Australia, but most of them weren't as scary as the one that was recently discovered in the Gulf of Mexico. This creature is straight out of a sci-fi thriller, a 26-foot-long manga pinna squid or bigfin squid. It was discovered near an offshore oil rig at a depth of more than 7,800 feet. It has incredibly long elastic tentacles, which can be 15 to 20 times longer than its body. It holds them at right angles to its body, making it look even creepier, almost as if it has elbows. And yes, it's another deep-sea predator. These 10 tentacles probably help the squid trap their prey and drag it onto the seafloor. We barely know anything about this extraterrestrial-looking creature because they're very hard to find and study. And if you think their tentacles are awful, just check out these creatures with 20 arms. This thing looks like a facehugger. This new species is lurking in the frozen depths of Antarctica. Experts were searching for cryptic sea animals known as Promachocrinus, or Antarctic feather stars. They're kind of similar to starfish and sea cucumbers, but have an otherworldly appearance and can live up to 6,500 feet below the surface. It's called the Antarctic strawberry feather star. Despite its pretty name, its appearance is anything but cute. It has a bizarre strawberry-like body from which 20 spindly arms branch off. Its coloring ranges from purple to dark reddish, and the arms all have different lengths and thickness. Who knows how many more of such scary creatures we'll discover in the future?